the first and really most important one that I'm sure everyone wanted to hear from us on this Monday when we had some off-screen stuff we had to take care of. The trade happened, and I'm never the guy to raise my hand and be like, hey, we were on this first. The second that there was any even inkling that Jiricek might be traded, we're immediately like, this needs to be done. This needs to happen here. Granted, we thought it was going to be Rossi because for whatever reason, Billy doesn't seem to want to commit on him one way or the other. But let's talk through a couple of different things here, Z. The trade itself, giving up Damon Hunt and 4 draft picks, first, second, third, fourth, scattered across different years. Do you have any problem with giving up that much for one player? Is it a preferred method for you to give up quantity to bring in, perceived quality, before we even get into really what the floor and ceiling look like for this guy?
So at first, before the years of those draft picks came out, I was like, oh, that's a good amount. But the fact that it's only the first round pick's the only pick in 2025, and then the second round pick and fourth round pick are in 2027, I have no problem with that whatsoever. And you don't give up like a top prospect. Damon Hunt's an NHL player at this point. Yeah. He should be playing in the NHL. We'll see what happens to Columbus because they still have I want to use the word deep. They have a high quantity of NHL defensemen already in their lineup, so we'll see if he gets in.
He's got to be less boxed out than he was here, though.
Right. Right? Absolutely.
And let's just give you like 1 or 2 minutes here to wax poetic, because since the dawn of time, you have been a large supporter of the psychotic Mateychuk Hunt pairing in Major Junior. These boys are reunited, and we've been asking for it. I'd say like every month or two, it comes up somehow. How happy are you that these guys are reunited?
Yeah, again, season 1 of Judd'z Budz, I would be going off. Maybe it was year 2, I don't even remember. But just in Moose Jaw, the combination, the D pair of Denton Mateychuk and Damon Hunt, absolute cocaine hockey. Like, they were F1 and F2 on the forecheck. Then they were the first 2 back, absolutely laying people out. Damon Hunt had like a goal every other game. Denton Mateychuk was like a point per game player. They were the most dynamic D pair I had seen in a very, very, very long time, and one of the best overall D pairs I've seen in the WHL. So I desperately need them to eventually find their way back to playing together, because they were so fun to watch. It will be interesting though, because if people remember when Damon Hunt was still playing in the WHL, I was like, he can absolutely not play like this in the NHL. Like, he won't be this won't work, because he is essentially just a rover out there. He looks like a forward. He plays like a forward, and he's like scoring goals like a middle 6 forward. And he immediately adjusted his game to the AHL and the NHL and played a far more responsible and translatable game, and it worked out for him. Obviously, like, not to the extent he became a full-time NHL player here, just given how many people were boxing him out. But so it'll be interesting to see if they do end up eventually playing together, if any of that old WHL David Hunt comes back out. I have a feeling it probably won't. I don't think Dean Everson was
Mateychuk, like a flip, just
literally, yeah.
A switch gets flipped. I messed
that
up.
They were so fun.
But yeah.
They were so fun to watch. So again, I desperately need them to be playing together. I don't know if he went down to Cleveland. I'm assuming that he did, because I don't think he's playing yet in the NHL or with Columbus. Sure. But if that's the case, then I really hope that they're playing together down there.
Required.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was one of the first things that came up. We were like, oh my God, he's going to get to play with Mateychuk again.
Yeah. I feel like it has to happen in the AHL, because there's no way that Dean Evison is going to allow those two to do their thing in the NHL. That is like very anti-Evison. I love Dean Evison, and like, he's doing awesome things over there. Dean Hevison isn't going to put up with that shit.
No, not at all. That will not be tolerated. Like again, for people who never saw that or never listened to me talk about this in years past, if you can find videos of the Moose Jaw Warriors that year, this would have been 2021, maybe 2022. It was must watch TV. I think Mateychuk at one point was like top 10 in the WHL for puck touches per game. Like the puck was on his stick 60-70% of the game. It was insane. And then Hunt was just unloading bombs because, I mean, again, we haven't really seen him even in Iowa. He doesn't get a whole lot of offensive opportunities anyways. So people forget how ridiculous of a shot he has. Like he's got a cannon of a one-timer, a slap shot. But I mean, they'd be in the slot. They'd be again F1 and F2 on the forecheck. It was insane. And then Hunt was just blowing people up, fighting everybody. Then Mateychuk would start fighting someone. They were like the Batch brothers putting up almost like point per game numbers. It was insane. It was so fun to watch. So again, desperately need them to be on the same pair at some point here because I'll be curious to see what it looks like now. The mature David Hunt's like, Denton, we can't play like that again. Buddy, if we want to play for Dino, we can.
Denton, what are you wearing, bro? Figure out your fit.
yeah, come on.
I didn't even factor in. Since Hunt's gone, that means Mikey Milne is the de facto Mr. GQ. He is the dresses well guy. Because when we had Lambos on and we had him do all the superlatives on Fellowship of the Rink, he said Damon Hunt is like the obvious answer, but he's like the 1B is absolutely Mikey Milne. So
I love that. It's true. He is like Mikey Milne is just so fun, like a little ball of chaos, and he's just like hilarious. Like especially I said this before they drafted him. Like I think he's chirping just like 80% of the game. He looks like he would be a complete non-factor. That he's got like 3 points in a game in the like he was ripping apart the WHL his last year there. And he's again since getting to Iowa, he's just been solid and putting up good points. So, but just like the all-around play combined with the fact that he is just nonstop running his mouth. The pictures of him in the outfits getting into the arena are incredible. So Mikey Milne rules.
Yeah. Now, before we get back to Jiricek, philosophical question. Trades like this, because I love being on like the receiving end, like the Wild were of, hey, give up the quantity, get the quality, or at least, obviously Billy and Judd feel it's quality. Is that something you can only do if you have like the depth of prospects that the Wild do, or do you think that like any team, regardless of their prospect pool, you make a trade like this to get the upside of a player like Jiricek?
I mean, when you look like for the Wild specifically, they were in the prime position to do this, especially when you looked at like we've talked about this before. The left side of their defense in the prospect pool is absolutely loaded. Like there's too many. We'll have to stay tuned over the next year or two to see who comes and goes, who eventually sticks in the NHL.
We're going to start playing 3 defensemen and 2 forwards.
Yeah. But the right side, it's like Brock Faber, who's not a prospect. He was basically never actually a prospect, honestly. He pretty much just got traded.
He was an LA King, and then he was our savior. There was no in between.
Yeah. And then, but after that, the right side of defense, everyone knows how much I love Kyle Masters. He's a long-term project. Again, still may never end up making it in Minnesota, especially. But then you got the recently drafted Sebastian Suini. You've got David Spacek, which feels like probably the one other right shot D-man that's just gonna be in the lineup no matter what. But they're pretty thin, and there wasn't a whole lot of upside as far as like what Jiricek can bring to the table. Plus, you just factor in how well they've drafted over the past few years, and they still had plenty of picks to use. So, I mean, when you look at what a guy like Jiricek, like that type of prospect, adds, and then like the foundation that you have, like first of all, they're first place in the NHL right now, but like looking forward to like when we would think that they would want to actually be contender / or really just like, I'm sure in their plans, they're planning on contending in the next few years. They've like David Jiricek just like adds like one of those pillars, especially the back end. So it kind of rounds out your like top of the lineup as far as the prospects and young players go. He's just another piece, and he doesn't have to be a number one either. That's the thing. You've got Brock Faber here already. So when we actually talk about the player, we'll go over some like the limitations or whatever, or like reasons he didn't end up cracking it in Columbus. But like the fact that you've got Faber on the ice for like half the game, he's not like Jiricek's isn't going to have to be forced to do a lot of things that he's maybe not the best at. So it's a good, again, I felt like Minnesota was just the right fit from the beginning. They've got the pieces to move to make it happen. And I actually was very surprised that the prospect going the other way was only Damon Hunt, 1 pick in 2025 and the rest of the picks in 2027. And you also get a 5th round pick back or 4th round pick.
Well, the word is, I think this was from Friedman. Maybe it was someone else. Is Friedman or Merrick, which like is very confusing now that I have to parse that because they don't record together. It sounded like the other teams that were willing to offer more were all Metro teams, and they didn't want to do that.
Right. And was it true? There was a team offering 2 firsts that eventually either like that got pulled or something.
I think 2 teams were like willing to go with 2 firsts, but again, they were both in the Metro from the sounds of it. And Columbus is like,
weird.
No. Right. I think it's extremely weird. It's different if it's a superstar, like an already proven guy. Like, let's say Kaprizov needs to be traded because he will not sign, and like you're not going to lose him for nothing. Trading him in division would be like psychotic, right? Like that I understand, like taking a little bit less of a return to get him out of the division, ideally out of the conference. But with a prospect, it seems a little
that you've given up on,
right? That
you've already made the choice that isn't going. He's not like, going to be playing here. We have doubts that he's going to be a top of the lineup player. Like, who gives a fuck?
Well, especially because if he does pan out, no matter what, you look like shit, right? You're like, God damn it, we missed. This sucks. It's really not going to make a difference whether it's in or out of division. But
you're missing, like, what was he, 6th overall?
Yeah.
Right? So it sucks enough that the pick that the 6th overall pick that you use isn't going to pan out, isn't going to be playing for you. Get the biggest return you possibly can, regardless of what team is offering. Like,
yep.
And I'm sorry, again, you've already given up on the guy. Like, you've decided that he's not going to be playing here. Why are you limiting the return? Like, even with him, even with the it's crazy because, like, the fact that there were teams willing to give up more.
Wait, though. Petty Wars. What if it was Carolina?
God.
And Waddell's like, no.
That would be so funny.
Like, yeah, they actually offered us 3 firsts, but right here, guys.
They were offering first that they don't have. But no, but like
they were offering me the early seconds they're going to trade up for in perpetuity that are going to end up being Stallions.
They're actually just going to draft for us. They're going to draft for us moving for the next 3 years. That's the return is they're just drafting our draft.
But okay, let's talk then floor and ceiling, right? Like, let's start with the bad, right? Like, what have we seen the last year or two that at least make it somewhat reasonable that a team moved on from him? Because we it's well established, right? Multiple coaches, multiple front office regimes. there's definitely a level of onus that goes on the player, but it's not like this is on him directly, right?
Right.
So what have we seen? What looks bad and what's looked okay so far? And then we'll spin into okay, here's where he could be based on what we saw draft here.
Yeah, I mean, so since he's been drafted and since he came over and played in the AHL, he looks to be a really solid 2A D-man. He was able to defend well enough, but then, when he gets his call-ups to the NHL, and this has been the thing that's the one kind of mark against him since his draft, well, just before he got drafted, is like just the foot speed. And there's been plenty of times in the NHL you've seen him get burned wide, and that's just something that probably isn't all that correctable. At that point, you're probably working more on just like anticipating early, like position stuff, and just mitigating the risk of like players taking him wide. And again, I think it was Portsline put out that like the major concern or like the biggest reason that they decided to move on was that lack of foot speed and the skating in general, which again, to me is pretty crazy. It's like, fuck it. Like, let's just part ways with our 6th overall pick. He also mentioned the fact that like he's been getting loud about not being in the NHL. He's convinced he's an NHL player. And like, I guess it may have like rubbed some of his teammates the wrong way in the process. But like, again, unless it's like drastic and something that like is legitimately everyone's like, shut the fuck up and he won't, like whatever, then I'm like, all right, if there's just no way that like that could work, then fine. But it's the foot speed and the skating and just like his struggle defensively when called up to the NHL, I guess. I mean, that's just the big reason that he like got moved. And the fact that on like a pretty brutal Columbus Blue Jackets team since he got drafted, including their defenseman that they brought in, like he wasn't able to like crack that full time, even as like a 6. That's always going to be concerning anyways. But like clearly the situation just wasn't right for him there. But it's the big thing with him is the skating and like the struggling to defend that in the NHL level when he has been called up. Because in the AHL, he's been a beast. You see like the skating concerns pop up still there, obviously, like it pops up anywhere, but he's played really good hockey in the AHL since he's came to Cleveland. He's like over 0.5 point per game since he's been there. So
see, defensemen aren't allowed to have time to develop. They're actually the easiest position to transition into the NHL with. I'm not sure if you heard this.
Yes,
people are
Brock Faber. Like that's how everyone.
That is a problem. He's really set a really bad bar. Like poor Zeev Buium. If he doesn't score like 2 goals a game, people are going to think he's a bust.
This is terrible.
Now, if I told you like 2 or 3 years ago that the same organization would draft David Jiricek and give up on him within 2 years, but also give a 4x4 to Erica Branson, would you believe me?
Blow my mind. I like sometimes like. And that was the same summer that Philly gave Delorier a 4-year deal. That was like a weird time in general. But
was it the same year?
I think it was the same offseason.
Because it was the same year that Johnny Gaudreau got signed there. Because I know that was like the thing, like, oh yeah, buddies, like,
right,
sure, cool, but
okay,
like,
all right.
People want to get mad about Billy's 4x4s. They're all better than a good Branson 4x4.
That one was legitimately. Remember, I would go on here and just be like, "Let me read you the 5-on-5 underlying numbers from Columbus Blue Jackets last night." When he was on the ice, the Columbus Blue Jackets had 4 shot attempts and 37 against, and he was on the ice for 5 fucking goals against an even strength. They went 0 for 2 on the PK. He literally did none of his job. It's insane. 4x4. Unbelievable.
Yeah. But all right, let's talk then ceiling. Like, if things go the right way, he comes in, he's got the right, like, locker room feel. The organization empowers him, fixes some of the things that are fixable, and, ends up being a big piece here. I mean, you got Buium and Faber long term. If this guy pans out, what are we looking at? Like how could he project based on all the awesome things you were seeing going into his draft?
Yeah, so he's a player that, like, the fact that he's as big as he is and he's got the offensive toolkit that he has, he looks to be, and especially here in Minnesota where he doesn't have to be like a number 1 or a number 2, he can easily be probably like I would put him like a 4, a 3-4 that's going to give you good offense, and he's going to be able to be used significantly more offensively. Since again, you already have guys like Booyam, like Favors just still putting up offense, which is just, I mean, interesting. So he's not going to have to be like the go-to really anywhere, but like he's shown that he can quarterback a power play too. Like we've talked about this. Again, you already have Booyam, like you just drafted him. So again, like second power play, but like you're gonna be able to lean on him offensively. And I mean, when you look at, I mean, even just taking this year, there's like a couple defensemen that have put up any offense in Minnesota. So the fact that you can like rely on a guy like Jiricek to give you some secondary offense from the back end, you know, again, like he's super skilled as far as like breaking the puck out. He's had a really good first pass. It's really hard to forecheck despite the fact that he's not the greatest skater in the world. And when he decides to be physical, he can fucking kill guys. So he is a very physical, big, probably number 3, 4 that gives you good offense. While you don't really need to like force him to do a ton of the defensive duties that like he's been struggling with so far. I think you also just give him like, you have more time to work with him on that part of the game too. So, I mean, he looks to be a second pair guy who's going to give you good offense, and there should be room to grow defensively, at least like becoming significantly better than he's been so far. Again, it's also weird when he's just like sitting in the press box for weeks, sitting him back down to Cleveland, maybe giving him one NHL game, setting him back down, calling him up just in the press box again. So he hasn't really, this year specifically, he hasn't really had a great opportunity to like get any kind of momentum whatsoever as far as like ice time goes. But I mean, like watching him playing in his draft year and the year before in the Czech Republic in that pro league, he was dynamic offensively and like physical to the point where it was also becoming a concern where it was like the decision making here. He's like, let me go decapitate this guy while we're up 5 with 2 seconds left in the game. I'm gonna baseball swing this guy in the face. And it was just like, this kid's 17. And it's like he's just doing that on the ice, playing pro hockey in Czechia. That's nuts. But again, it's a really good fit in Minnesota, given the fact he's not going to have to be like the go-to key man really in any of their situations. He can just really thrive, not having to go up against top lines, being able to be given a pretty significant leash offensively, and you buy yourself time to work on him on the defensive stuff. So again, it is the perfect fit as far as if he's going to get traded out of Columbus. Like Minnesota was the spot that made the most sense. And again, in terms of like quantity, yeah, they may have given up a lot, but like you didn't give up any of your top prospects as far as like recently drafted guys.
Yeah.
1 first-round pick in 25 and like 3 in 2027. Like not a crazy price to pay. It's a bad return on investment if you're Columbus. Like that's a bad, like, especially again the fact they turned down better offers. Like that's just crazy to me.